Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth webinar for the Restaurant CEO Bootcamp under our Emerge Stronger campaign. Our Emerge Stronger is brought to you by Pepco Holdings, as well as a partnership with Bowie Bick, FFC First, and the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. I am Nicole Hall, Business Development Manager for Restaurant Retail for the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. We're so happy to have you here today. This is our fourth webinar under the CEO Bootcamp for Restaurants, but we have a wonderful presentation lined up for you talking about procurement. Please remember this session is recorded and will be available on our webinar library on the Emerge Stronger website that we'll put into the chat. Just some quick housekeeping rules. All participants' microphones and videos will be disabled during the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A option on your website on the link here, as well as the chat feature that we can dialogue with each other throughout the presentation. The presentations, I said, will be available on the Emerge Stronger website. So that's emergestrongerpgc.com. And we'll also have that in the chat. If you have attended 2 or more of these sessions, the EDC and support by the Pepco Holdings will be offering you a free subscription to QuickBooks or Shopify, depending on what your needs are. So please make sure, if you have not seen some of the other webinars, that you go back and take a look at them. In addition, I'll have my email address available to you in the chat box if you have more questions and need additional resources that the county can provide, because we're first and foremost here as a resource to you as a business owner. As I said, Tom Rakowski, our presenter, is going to take it away, and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and welcome back, everyone. And we're going to get talking here again. My name's Tom. Been doing this for 30 years, born and raised in Baltimore. And really, I wouldn't say I was forced into it, but fell into it. My mom was a nurse, and she was always working odd hours, so I had to do some cooking. And today we do have a special guest. Kenny Plant is going to be here. He's the corporate chef from Saval Food Service. If you don't know about Saval, they're it's a small business. It's the only broadline in Maryland, and that they really only Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia is where they deliver to. Kenny has been doing this for a long time himself. Went to BIC himself, and then is really passionate about doing some work with local charities out there. So we'll be leaning on him for some insights in the procurement process as we go through the webinar today. Again, about the SBDC, and that's who I work for. We really are, first and foremost, it is right now during COVID-19, everything that we offer is free. And we really, in 3 different categories. We're in training, we're in counseling, and also technical assistance. And things are constantly changing. We're still hoping to get a new package, so have all your financials ready to go and contact us as soon as they make more money available. Be ready to go with that. Today's agenda. So as we talk about procurement, there really is a before you buy, and there's these, I call them pre-steps to do smooth purchasing, and we'll get into that in the beginning. Then we're going to actually get into the restaurant purchasing process. And then also, finally, which is the kind of close the loop, is that managing of the inventory process, which is super important, and we'll get into some of that. So getting into before you buy, essential pre-steps for smooth purchasing. So I really firmly believe that the restaurant industry is really, it represents the purest form of market dynamics. At the end of the day, but you need to be profitable, right? If you're not making money, you're not going to be in business. So, one of the biggest costs, right? We have 2 big costs: food cost and labor cost. This whole, idea right here is going to get into really what affects the food cost throughout. And it's really talking about being proactive, getting employees involved, some of the things that we touched on before, and what that role of that restaurant buyer, the purchaser, the person who is responsible for the entire process of purchasing, storing, issuing the supplies of raw items, canned, bottles, beverages, paper products, and equipment. And if it was depending on the size or what that person does, they're also probably in charge of any kind of dishwashing leases, contract cleaning, hood cleaning, things of that nature. So this person's role is super important and literally control the purse of the whole restaurant. So as we go into that role of the restaurant buyer and the purchaser, it's nowadays what's really truly changed is COVID-19. And you have to make sure that as we're getting these deliveries, as we're preparing the restaurant, that we're ready for. We're ready for deliveries. We're ready for food, that we have coordination through cleaning, through restocking, that we're staying up to date with what's going on in not only, your marketplace, but also, with the CDC and regulations as they constantly change. And, I'm with you. It's a little bit confusing to me sometimes also where, the governor's saying one thing and the county saying the other. So it's super important. And if you have a question, reach out to anyone who has that information. We gave some resources earlier just to get, the knowledge. So you're super on top of things. So again, if you walk away, those purchasing decisions have to be linked to the health protocols. Just something to really understand and know about. Now, we talked about the role of the employee before, and again, if you think about it, the employee is truly the frontline ambassador. They're getting the feedback. They can see what's going on. They're your troubleshooters. I had a manager, and it sticks in my head to this day. And he used to say, "They're your traffic light. They're your traffic light when it comes to how the food looks. They're your traffic light to how the flow of the restaurant. And look at them. Are they red? Are they stopping? Are they slowing things down? Is it green light? Go go go? Or is it yellow light? Hey, let's look out for these spots." So super important to have a great relationship. Not only with the employees, front of the house, back of the house, but also, nurture that in relationship with the employees, with the guest. The more information that you can get to the employee, and, we hear this term cross-train, we hear this term consistency, but the more information that the employee has, the better they can help any aspect of the restaurant. Maybe they're not the cashier, or maybe they're not the grill person, but the more they understand about the grill, the better that they can get, the order correctly, get the product to the guest the way they want it, knowing what the capabilities of the restaurant are as opposed to what they can't do. If it's in this day and age, guests are doing all kinds of special requests, and some things you can do and some things you can't. If something's pre-made or pre-portioned or pre-mixed, you can't take certain ingredients out of a pre-mixed dressing, but maybe there are other options. So for the employee to have that information and they're able to answer those questions on the spot, it makes it just super easy for the flow of the restaurant. Now, as we talk about these pre-steps in procurement, you're like, what the heck's a pre-step? Well, you just don't wake up one day, have a menu ready to go and start ordering. As you get into this kind of menu development and adaptation, you seriously want to look at what the restaurant can do, your considerations as far as, what's your refrigeration? What are you going to sell? How are you going to sell it? And where it's going to come from? And some of those, considerations are, if you want to do seasonal specials, or if you're going to have to get like that one-off item or fresh crab meat in Maryland, right? You can only get it so many months out of the year. So you want to gear that restaurant, your menu around that. And that may require different items, different suppliers, and different costing mechanisms. You want to look at those costs. And again, we talked about it earlier, where are you going to fix those costs as far as, are you going to get some stuff pre-done? Are you going to get some stuff, are you going to prepare, things in-house, and how that affects the cost? And yeah, maybe you can reduce a little labor cost, but increase a little food cost. And looking how that reflects through the whole, totality of how the operation runs. Also, you want to do, menu testing. Especially if you're up and running, it's really good to just do some menu testing with your staff, with some new guests. New guests love that. talking to your customers and just really, figuring out what works in your market. And also maybe you have some things that you want to, that are on a great price right now. Maryland crab meat, great price, end of the summer. It's a big supply. So maybe you want to introduce crab cakes to this menu. So knowing all these steps, is going to be super important in the ordering process. Kenny, I guess I have a quick question for you. What protocols have you seen different from a supplier standpoint? We talked about keeping the restaurant clean. What have you guys changed or instituted since COVID-19?
There's been a lot of changes. We've now made it to where a lot of things that never used to break in a case are available to be broken because people's numbers are down. You're operating at 10%, 20%, or became a delivery. People didn't have the need for, say, 200 rolls. They only needed 50. So, we have bags of 48 that we started breaking cases that had independent UPCs to try to adapt with the restaurants. We did away with minimums for most places. People just couldn't afford, to bring in large quantities of food without knowing what the next day was going to bring, whether the government was going to shut down or if the local government or even, a lot of restaurant owners decided it wasn't worth, putting their staff at risk. So they just went completely to carry out.
Right. So you guys had to pivot just like the restaurants had to pivot.
And everybody doing it at the same time, trying to, when the market supports, 50 million to-go containers a day in production, and it automatically, overnight goes to 70 million or 80 million, plants had to stop making cups to start making boxes and things like that. And just making sure we could get the product ahead of time. The lead times on these are longer than most people would, imagine.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I guess, like I was saying earlier, you had to pivot just like the restaurants. But on a different note, how can a supplier, or specifically, what do you see, or what can your operation offer that, as far as menu developing or costing or testing, do you have any services to facilitate that?
Yeah, actually at Salvo, we have a test kitchen, and I am a full-time chef on location that people interested in doing business with us, or existing customers, if they're trying to make that pivot and they want to go from fine dining to pizza, they can call me up. I get them in touch with somebody, and then, we make an arrangement. Everybody masks up. We do the temperatures, make sure all the protocols are handled. And then they come into my kitchen and we spend, a couple hours coming up with their own thing so that they're not duplicating their neighbor. Maybe it's a small twist. I mean, we've turned gas stations into grocery stores through this. It's, it's, people are willing
to hear. Well, it's good to hear because we needed, everyone needed to pivot, and I think some people realized that even big everywhere down the supply lane or supply chain has had to pivot. So, well, that's great. So I'm glad that you've decided to cut the minimums and work with different areas. That's super smart. So yeah, if you have some ideas or questions that you're looking to, because some restaurants had to change. Some restaurants had to go from not only full service to go, but also change their menu design because their food didn't travel real well. So that's great that you have a test kitchen and can use those things. So I appreciate that. Some more pre-steps as far as your menu consideration, and we got a page in workbook number 9 is, when you're making items, there's a lot of things to consider, again, because you have this refrigeration, freezer space, and just space in general, storage, dry storage. What is the product life? What standard sizes or portions are available? I mean, if you wanted to sell an 8-ounce chicken breast, but they're not readily available, then you may have to, change your menu to a 6-ounce breast, or buy a larger one and cut it in half, And the other one, this is a huge deal, is how do you store it? And I made this mistake my first 3 years in business, is choosing the correct containers. And what I mean by that is are they stackable? Can you, are you able to cross utilize these containers, as far as if you buy one kind of container and lids, and then the next week you buy a different kind of container and lids, are those lids interchangeable with the containers? Are they stackable? Are they easy to see? Do they have measuring lines on it? So really, if you walk away, just really take your time in what containers you're picking to use in those storage. Another huge consideration, again, and we talked about this in the prior meetings, is how is it prepped? Is it going to be prepped at a warehouse? Is it going to be prepped at the produce station, or are you going to prep it in house? And those considerations you have to look at based on your size. You may choose not to prep certain things in house because of the size of your restaurant, and it's or you have great size, so you can do more prep. And looking at the flow of the restaurant, where does the one item lead into the other, and does it make sense to buy stuff pre-done so you don't have to bread it and get it into the fryer? You can get it pre-breaded and ready to rock and roll. The other one is how long does it take to deliver? I'm sure if you're getting pre-cut items or some specialty items, there may be a different lead time, and to understand those. So, if you got to order it 2 days off, or I know that produce companies, and I'm sure, Kenny, if you in your cut shop, you probably have cutoffs where the order has to be in so people can prepare it. So you want to get, be aware of those times to get it in on time. And then, what else can you use it as? Meaning that, like, as far as, like, you don't want, you want to use your employees in many different roles. You want to use that piece of chicken in many different dishes. Chop it up for a salad, maybe make it into a sandwich, and make it an appetizer. So you're cross utilizing it, and you can make sure that hey, we're going to go and make sure these things. And then, kind of the golden rule in this area is look at your product mix, look at your sales mix, and get rid of the dogs. Meaning that the things that aren't selling, don't try to force them. Don't try to repackage them. If they're not working, they're not working for a reason. And get them out of there. Sell them in a different way, and then move on. You have to figure out, if you're getting orders, how many days a week are you getting those orders, or how many delivery days do they order? And really super big is, what is the reputation of that company that you're going to buy from in the industry?
We have one question that came up in the chat.
Sure.
Thank you, Isaac, for your question. Do you think a restaurant should allow for substitutions on menu items?
I'm going to answer it yes and no. So I would say, what was that? What is it? 5 Easy Pizzas. I forget the rest. It was with this famous movie where the guy walks in and he's like, he wants a sandwich, and he's like, well, you got peanut butter, you got egg, you got, just make it. If you can make it and it's not going to hurt the operation of the restaurant, 100% do it. You want to be flexible, just like, you want your guests to be flexible. They want you to be flexible. And don't be afraid to charge. So if people are making modifications, more cost more. So if they want to add things and it's not a big deal, then 100% do it. And if you do have, and you instill that into your guests, this goes back to the employee and their role, to make sure that they're super knowledgeable, that they know, during the, I used to call lunch the hour of power. If you're in that hour of power, you don't want to do substitutions, and explain that to the guests. And I'm sure that they would understand, because in their busy life, they don't want to be bothered either on things. And I hate to use that word bother, but it's like, hey, I mean, Kenny, you've been doing this for a long time. What do you think about substitutions?
Well, you absolutely have to do them. But like you said, during the power hours, dinner rushes, Valentine's Day, a 5-minute variation on a 15-minute ticket time means the next customer after you is now going to 20-minute ticket times. So if it's feasible, yes, but if it involves running, like some restaurants have several menus, a lunch and a dinner. I want this off the dinner menu. That's fine, but you're going to have to allow additional time. And some people are like, well, I only have a 15-minute lunch. And that's why this menu was orchestrated for lunch. So if you can do it, absolutely. You don't want to lose customers. Nobody wants to lose customers. But it has to be so that your final product line, what your mission statement is, doesn't change because of it, especially with Yelp and everything. Even though they request something special, if you don't deliver on something special they wanted, it's still, bottom line, could make you look bad, but you really should go out of your way to make sure that all of your customers are happy.
Great. And I would second that. And, again, he touched on key points. I think we touched on before is, knowing your employee, knowing your capabilities, and don't overpromise. I always say under promise and over deliver. So just to keep people happy. And, we said it before, sometimes you have to say no to say yes. And it's okay to say no to that guest for this time and say, hey, you know what? Maybe do something extra for them. Maybe say, hey, you know what? I can't do that, but I could throw on an extra egg for you. You know what? That works. Win-win, walk away. So again, if you have to say no, look for that win-win, win-win situation if you can. All right, sticking with these pre-steps, getting ready to order that vendor. There's a lot of vendors out there, and you definitely want to vet your suppliers and vet your vendors. And it's not just what they're telling you. It's you're probably one of your first contacts is going to be a salesperson. So if anyone knows with salespeople, they're in the job to sell. So you got to dig a little deeper, making sure that that this is a legit company. And then look at a SWOT analysis, and we talked about the SWOT analysis before. Where are they delivering? How big are they? Do they have the items that you need? Are they well respected in the community? Do any of your neighbors use them who are in the restaurant business? What do you know about them? Do a quick Google search. In 2020, it's so easy to do some background checks on these companies. So, definitely take a look at what's going on with it, but also know, what are your vulnerabilities as far as, what's going on if it's a vendor that has to come from a state away or 2 states away. What are the construction, if there's construction going on, if there's weather patterns, you have to be aware of these things. And I always say, have multiple supply sources and manage. And Kenny, I know that you're with Saval Foods, but I know you've been a chef also for a long year, many years. And I know you'd be the first person to say, make sure you have at least 2, if not 3 suppliers in each category. But what's different? What's that?
Sorry, always have something in your back pocket.
Yeah, always have a plan B. But I guess, Saval being a small business, what do you think differentiates you as a supplier, and what do you look like what do you look for when you were a buyer in this industry?
Being that we are also a small business, we operate differently than larger vendors. We work as much as possible, especially with trucking. Trucking is the big thing. If you need, a lot of people will give you a 6-hour window for delivery. Ours is more along the 2 or 3. We're human. There will be mistakes, weather, traffic, like you said, but our drivers are not just drivers. They're like a second touch point of customer service. Larger companies operate as larger companies, and being family owned for 4 generations, the people who run our company, their name is on the door. I sit with them in the office. Like when you're dealing with larger companies, you have a board of directors, CEOs, there's a lot more hands, more room for mistakes. So I just, small business is supporting small business.
Yeah, and I think you said earlier about like you're able to pivot, quicker. Mm-hmm. I haven't heard that Cisco or some of the larger ones have discounted or reduced their minimums or got away with them. So that's a fair point. So, if you do have suppliers already, maybe it's time to we talk about this later on, but to do that check and recheck on what people are offering, because maybe you will get a better deal from a second source with that. Yeah, man. Thank you very much for the information. So as we're sourcing out those vendors, we definitely want to make sure that, we're checking that they deliver on what they deliver, and be careful of signing any kind of, I'll call it like vendor contracts. I would say Usually vendor contracts work best when you have 2 or 3 locations, and you can have a separate person who can, be in charge of that, more of a higher volume, and really be able to use and make those contracts work for you. And what a contract is basically is you're signing with a company to guarantee certain price levels. But this requires work on both sides. So some people would have, you'd have to do audits possibly to make sure that, the price that you're paying is what you agreed upon. And, they have to be open to that. And yet you also, have to have these open clauses in these contracts. So again, I typically say if you're a larger operation or you have 2, 3, 4 locations, they make a lot of sense because they can help the control and be central. But if you're a one store operation, I would definitely say it's all about building those relationships and watching your price fluctuations. As far as as your different terms and payments, there's COD, there's net 30, and that really depends on what you're doing as far as, your accounting, what you want to accomplish as far as, you know, if you are a person who likes to pay as it walks in the door and that's your accounting process, then definitely go COD. If you're a person who likes to collect the invoices, and today with modern POS and accounting systems, it's become a lot easier. And to be able to use that money for 30 days for other things, it might make sense for you. So it's really situational, but definitely, look at both sides of the coin on that one. Also, you got to look at their delivery schedule and frequency. A lot of places won't deliver on Sunday. Some do. Some people have will call, So if you do run into a bind that you can have, you can go pick it up at the place. The other huge thing is to have a great relationship with your salesperson, because there's going to be times where you're going to make a mistake, they're going to make a mistake, and you want to have that salesperson be able to drive down with the product and help you out.
Now, Tom, we have a question in the chat. One question came in. Is there a top thing I need to know when I pick a supplier?
I would say hands down is the integrity of that business. What is their reputation? And almost like it's liken it to a Yelp. You want a 5-star Yelp rating on this company, and just to make sure that they cross off all those boxes, that they do what they say, that they are into building relationships, and that you have a great way to communicate with them, whether it be through the main office, through your salesperson, or through the driver. And a lot of people don't look at this, but having a great relationship with your driver is an unbelievable plus. It's if you can walk away from this area and just say, hey, I'm going to build my relationship with the drivers, because they're touching every single product that comes into your building. And to not have a great relationship with them, I think you're missing out. I used to treat them as employees of mine. I used to give them a discount on their food. I used to offer them, drinks. We had each other's cell phone numbers, and they could pick up the phone and call me if there was a delay in the ordering, or, hey, they'd also call me if I could help them out. Hey, you know what, Tom, I have I have another stop who needs their stuff first. Is there any way I can, skip or come later in the afternoon? And that's fine if I don't need it, because they're going to say yes to me, a month from now when I mess up on my ordering. So yeah, great question. And then the other little trick that I like to do, and I wouldn't even call it a trick, is you're going to have purveyors coming in on a constant basis. And you may want to be, if you're changing your menu, and you're constantly want to have all this information, and that's the onboarding initial paperwork. So let's say you're doing COD. Why do I need to fill out a credit report if I'm doing a COD? I'm going to pay you every time. Because there's going to be that time where you're not there, or something happens, or it's a different receiver, or you run out of checks, and you want the capability for them to sign it and get those terms. So I say 100%, if you can get terms, set them up so you're set for success. So if that person comes in and they're not there, they're not able to receive or pay for the order, they can just sign for it. I used to keep all that information in one spot. And the other thing is I'd have the salesperson fill out the paperwork. Kenny's probably cringing. He's like, well, you as a salesperson. But I mean, if they're coming in and they want your business, give them that information. Hey, here's all my information that you need for the form. Please fill it out. I'll look it over and then sign it. And save yourself the time and the headache of doing that by having it all in one place. And again, it's all about relationships. It really is. Kenny, when it comes to like suppliers and other discounts, what can you talk about them? I know we talked about like that there's discounts from the actual manufacturer. How does that work?
It's a very simple, short answer. It's volume driven. If you're dealing in hundreds of cases, us as the supplier, we would be in touch with actually the manufacturer and their broker house directly. And they might, depending on, I can't speak for everyone, but say they might drop $1 a case. And, it adds up over the year, especially it's all volume driven in situations like that. There's front and back monies that are allotted to promotions, because a lot of these companies you do not see on the TV. So their marketing budget is actually more of a buyback for your loyalty.
Right.
Does that make sense? It's
100%. Yeah. So, and I used to use it for, and he says 100 cases. So think about that. I was selling 5 cases of regular fries and 4 cases of sweet fries. That's 9 cases times 7 days a week. They add up really quick. And I think it was Lamb Weston or McCain was giving me a discount. And I forget how it worked. I think they cut the price to the supplier and then it was sold. But you're right. Then also I was receiving checks. If I bought 10 cases of Hellman's mayonnaise within 3 months, I got a rebate check. So yeah, great point. So rebates and also discounts. And then what do you know about, like, I know sometimes I used to go to food shows, and if you sign up for a food show, there's other kinds of specials and discounts you can get if you attend a food show. And by the way, food shows are a great thing to go to. I'll let Kenny speak to food shows.
well, there's pre-booking. You sign up, say that you do a certain number of cases of hamburgers or French fries or anything like that. You go to the food show, you find that booth. Unfortunately, everything this year is virtual, so there won't be the giant buffet and good times and the band and all that. But you can pre-book the quantity that you think that you're going to sell. And when you hit that number, a discount is applied to the items that you bought. And, a check or a credit or however, that company, depending on their marketing department, decides to pay that out, is real money in the operator's pocket.
So don't be afraid to ask your salesperson every which way of how to get discounts, because some of them you may and some of them you won't. And don't think that you're too small, because a single operation that sells one product, you might, if you're a pizza place, you're probably using a heck of a lot of mozzarella cheese. So don't think that you're not busy enough to get a discount. And money's money. If you're only getting discounts on 3 items, that's better than 0 discounts in my book.
Absolutely. And there's a reverse on this. Sometimes you just have to be careful of companies that try to get you to sign different kinds of contracts where they offer you a lot of money up front, but then they control their margin that you are now locked into paying for. So if the market changes and drops, you're paying, maybe it's $1 more a case, maybe it's $1 more a pound. You just don't know. So it's basically almost like a predatory loan, but interest attached to it.
Right.
So
yeah. So do your
homework.
Yeah,
Right.
especially I was a buyer for the commodity market, and especially with cheese going into
block and barrel.
cheese and butter going into the holiday season. You definitely have to stay abreast of the commodity market if those are, of course, for restaurant. Hope everyone's using butter. So if you are not tied into the pricing and how that pricing structure works globally, and literally the price of milk, how that affects you, that's very important for you from a long term. So I would highly recommend just understanding seasonality, especially for some of those commodity items.
My daughter says her number 1 ingredient is butter. I'm starting her young. She should have been born in France. So anyway, so there's some good stuff on workbook pages 10 and 11. Sorry, Kenny, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that we actually have our commodity buyer on premise, watches the markets, and we publish every week a blog on block and barrel, pork belly, to let you know where and why, this year for the holidays, it's going to be New York strips. Ribeyes are going to be through the roof, tenderloins. You're going to be 20, 30, 40. Depending on your quality, New York strips are the way everybody find a use for them.
There you go. So great point is, and it's, I know that produce does it, and Kenny, you're sharing with commodities. Any company that you buy for, understand all of the services that they offer. Not just, hey, you're buying this and getting this, but they're the big boys on the block. They're dealing with the volumes and they know what's moving. They know what's selling, and Kenny went into this pivot, talk to them. Hey, buy as many, it's beyond that point now, but I'm sure they could have tipped you off that, hey, you know what, to-go items are shooting up in price. So you might as well pack up now before you go. Because these prices tend to move weekly. So knowing and locking in before they happen is super important. So definitely, don't be afraid to ask your supplier what else they offer, because they offer a lot. And some of these guys can offer menu help and menu design if you're buying enough of their, like for French fries, I was getting enough volume that they would support my menu design. Granted, they put a little logo in the corner, but hey, to save a few $100, why not, right? Mm-hmm. So as we talk about, the last step in this pre-step is the pricing model is, looking at, what is, as far as what can you bring in large scale, like Kenny just alluded to, looking out, it's if you're doing ribeyes, that price is going to go through the roof. So bringing in that New York strip or changing up the menu to do that, and having the flexibility in your menu that it doesn't, medium rare. I don't even know what kind of steak I get, but it's always delicious. But that company, it never, it's this, they never claim to have it. Just says, steak. So maybe using some generic terms sometimes is going to be beneficial to that. And then also is we go back to the onion example. Do you know your onions? Meaning, does it make sense to cut up in-house a 50-pound bag of onions or buy them pre-cut? Yes, you save on labor, but you pay more on cost. But in the end, that may be the better model for you. So you got to understand that. Understanding, the different pricing models as it comes to a full-service restaurant that you used to be, and now you're all online and doing to-go food. So how does that change your structure and things that you have to bring in? And use the tools that you have on workbook page 12, things like price sheets, comparing the different suppliers to make sure that you're getting the best price. Because just like you, the supplier might have bought a bunch of stuff and have a little bit extra and can sell it at a cheaper price. I mean, frozen's frozen. Who cares if it was 1 week or 2 weeks old? So you can get better price. So don't forget to compare your prices, and clip those coupons, as my mom used to say. So that was really the pre-steps. If any questions pop up, Nicole, for the pre-steps, please jump in. If not,
we're going to have one question. I was waiting for you to take a little break.
Oh, there you go.
So speaking of drivers, what do you do if an open box, after you open a box post-delivery and it was labeled incorrectly, busted, or damaged?
Yeah, great question, because this is going to happen sooner or later. And, I'll speak from my endpoint. I'm sure Kenny has some good insight too. Again, it begins with that relationship that you have with your supplier. And it's also to have a plan, because you're not going to be in the store every day. So what is your protocol? And have that process, written down and discussed with who is receiving it. And typically what happens is if it's the wrong product and it was labeled wrong, you call and you get it shipped again. And, you want to make sure if you need that product that day, that it's going to come that day. If it's damaged, typically you want to catch that when the driver's in the store. But again, if you have that great relationship and you call the store an hour later and say, hey, we just opened up, this box and it's all busted inside or labeled wrong, they're going to they're going to make that exchange for you. I mean, Kenny, do you have anything to add, or would you just disagree with me?
No, I agree with you in part, but things like fresh product, say it's chicken, things that in the state of Maryland, technically, once it leaves the building, we don't know how it's been handled. So even if it came off the driver's truck, and these things like chicken hopefully can be caught at delivery time, like you said, Tom. There are ways to work around it. It depends on the relationship that you keep with. I mean, just always ask, because there are different rules for different products. But for the most part, if damage happened, you should be made whole, in my opinion.
And that's typically, and that goes back, I think, to that other, this question has multi levels, because if that company has integrity, if that company is the best, then they're going to replace that no matter what. And again, I really believe in relationships. I believe in relationships with the driver, with relationships with the salesperson, and relationships with the business, because there's so much more that they can bring to the table. And there's so many more. Think about it. You have one location. They're probably dealing with, Kenny, off the top of your head, how many restaurants, hotels do you deliver to?
Restaurants, I'd say 90% of them are small, independent owned establishments. I can't even come up with a number off the top of my head, but I'd probably have to say 8,000.
So just think about that.
I was going to say the chains. We also have major accounts where we have, I don't know if I can say the name of it, but a line of gas stations in the Midwest that also have taco shops in them that are owned by conglomerates. So
gotcha.
Yeah. So if you think that you're, so even the drivers. So if you're like, man, it seems slow this week, ask the driver, hey, how are your deliveries to the rest of the places? Oh man, everybody's slow because of, the inauguration, or everyone's slow this week because of whatever it is. And then it kind of gives you peace of mind too, because there are times when I was sitting in my restaurant and be like, why is nobody in? And then you discover, that there is a road closure, or there is something else going on. So
the marathon.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy what happens. Anyway,
one of the things,
yep.
Just to follow up on that question is, especially when I was a buyer, we would need to definitely reach out to the supplier as quickly as possible. So don't wait until like the end of the week or a few days later. You want to reach out to them as soon as possible and take pictures and email.
Absolutely,
so that
pictures.
that you can record, okay, was it damage? Was it a puncture? Was it something on a truck? Was it something that maybe could have got caught before it was loaded? So you definitely want to document and reach out to the supplier or your sales rep as soon as possible. Don't delay. Because one thing that they can probably either react quickly and get you a replacement product quicker, or give you a credit, but you don't want to delay it. And when you say, oh, when I have time, and next thing you know, it's 3 days later. So just be kind of quick on that response.
That was the best response, because some of this actually comes from the distributor, and we can't see it because the box is taped when we receive it. So if it's frozen something and it thawed, and then it went back into our freezer, and we didn't know it was in the center of 52 pallets. As soon as take a picture, get it to us, then we will make it whole.
Yeah.
Guys, great point. I missed that one. Pictures, especially in 2020. Everybody has a camera phone.
As much information as you can get.
Yeah.
And also train your staff on, if you're not the one receiving, whoever's receiving in that product, train them the kind of the watch outs to look for from a box. Because a lot of times you can tell the grade of something. If there's an issue on the inside, it's probably going to start looking on the outside, a little damage. So, just really take some time to train whomever, if it's not yourself, who's receiving in those deliveries, to make sure you don't have a problem, especially when you're coming in later and it's for today's menu.
Awesome. Any more questions, or are we ready to jump to the next part?
Ready to go.
Awesome. Now, actually getting into, so now we're there. Now we've decided what our menu is, what, where it's going to be stored, what our space is, and now we're ready to start the ordering process. Now, first of all, as the purchasing process goes, there's probably about 9 steps, right? And we want to look at this as an ongoing process. This isn't just do this one thing. This is a continual process, and everybody's involved. As we said, look how important it is to have every staff member trained so they can snap those pictures if they see something. And you got to remember that the prices are fluctuating. It's a commodities market. Some things, are pretty, standard, but for a lot of things, especially fresh vegetables and stuff and meats, they're going to constantly. And the one thing I love about the restaurant business is that the factory is on the showroom floor. You can't, when you go in to buy a Tesla, you don't see them building it in the back, but when you order a burger, they're building it right there. So there's a lot of different things that it offers. And again, I'll go back to that. It's that, kind of purest sense of the world of where, the market economy is in the restaurant industry. As far as purchasing the product, right? You want to do your math, and Kenny spoke to it earlier. Sometimes you get case breaks, sometimes you don't. Sometimes they've changed those rules, so constantly be up to speed on what's going on. And there is an exercise on workbook page 13 if you're following along with the workbook. Also, analyze your spending and product use in real time, price versus shrinkage. And this is huge because with today's modern POS systems, with today's inventory systems, with everything being digital, if all your information is in your computer, when you hit that button, it's going to pull those ingredients out, and you're going to know in real time, not only, some cost figures, but also what you need to order, and make adjustments, revise that order mix as necessary. If things are selling that typically don't sell because it's National Burger Day or it's National Corn Day, then make sure you make those adjustments. All right. Consider menu alterations that maximize cross utilization opportunities. Meaning that if something that is selling or something that you've gotten now that is very price, in your favor, think about expanding that product for a few months if it's available, and making more money. Using it as a higher profit margin. And then also, you can also, when you think of a broad line, when you think of a Cisco or a Saval or a US Foods, you typically may get certain things from them. And I know for now they said that the minimums have been reduced, at least for Saval. But don't forget that they also have toilet paper, paper towels, masks, gloves, and have that list ready. So if you don't have the minimum order, and you need to add a few $100s or $100, have that list ready to go and say, hey, what else can we get on there to help to get this? And then adjust your order schedule to account for foreseeable disruptions. And we kind of alluded to this earlier. My particular restaurants were in Arlington, Virginia, and we had to look at every current event from protests to marches to, marathons to bike races to, and then the surprise, motorcade. And you had to be ready to rock and roll because you never knew what was coming down. That's why I always say, keep that like 10% buffer in your orders so you're ready for those fluctuations. And a lot of times, if there's a weather disruption, they may not deliver that day. So if that's the case and your order day is on Wednesday and the storm's hitting Tuesday night, call your salesperson on Sunday, on Friday, on Monday, and say, hey, can we get our order earlier? So we don't have any kind of a situation where we're going to run out of things. Super important to do. So we picked our supplier. We've done our first order. Now this, is probably the most important thing that goes on during this whole process is the receiving of the product. All right. And when you receive that product, you have to, there's a lot of things. There's some exercises on workbook page 14. But you want to have a robust checks and balances and have as many people involved as possible. And there's many ways to do this. So bigger places, hotels, they use what's called a PO, and you can match up the PO to the invoice, meaning that's a purchase order. Other places just, collect the invoices or make sure the chef is communicating with the next day. Hey, these are the 5 orders coming in today that you're matching up, and account for all deliveries at the end of the day. How many times has an invoice gotten lost? And it gets lost. It doesn't get into the mix. And next thing you know, you're like, woohoo, food cost is so low this week. Well, you didn't put an order in, or you didn't put the invoice in. So, have that checks and balances so it's seamless throughout. Um, I always designate and authorize specific staff members for accepting order, train them well, and also, a specific area where those invoices would go. Um, and I would have them actually check it off piece by piece, initial it, and you know, you write right on the invoice if something is sent back. If something is, do the math, write it on there. Hey, sent it back. Usually they have some kind of codes, and the driver will be involved in it. But make sure all that information is on the invoice, because that invoice is what the company uses and it's what you use. And as you're inspecting these items, again, we're going to go back. Just like you would get if you get a box at your house. You're gonna pretend it's Christmas every day. Shake the box a little. If you hear some rattle, maybe something's broken in there. Open them up. Look for leakage if it's that kind of product. Smell it if it's a cold product. If it's something that's refrigerated, take that thermometer and stick it right between the bags. If you have 2 bags of cryovac, stick it right in that bag and make sure it's temped. Some items are actually delivered with temperatures on there, and if they go above a certain temperature, it'll kind of break the seal, and that product's been exposed to temperatures that it shouldn't have. So 100%, double check on that, and you have to account for the product. Nicole, what's your word that you used to use? You're saying about you got to buy right to sell right or something.
Yep, buy right to sell right.
Oh, I was trying to think of it last night. You got to buy right to sell right. And, the most important part of that is getting the item in the back door. It's how many times have you said, you ordered something, it's on the invoice, but you can't find it anywhere. It's frustrating. And, you don't want to spend money on mystery items. So checks and balances, make sure it's all in there. Mm-hmm. And then getting into the other half, this has 2 slides. This is how important this area is to me. Agree in advance to the processes for resolving incorrect orders. All right. So that you're going to have issues from time to time. So have those systems in place with the supplier, with the driver, with whoever else is involved in this process, and to make sure that you try to fix things on the spot. I think I said it, Nicole said it, and Kenny said it. If you don't, that's the one super important thing to get from this is make sure that what you ordered comes in the door, you get what you paid for. And if there's issues, you're fixing them on the spot, and great idea. If you have something damaged, take a picture of it. All right. Then, like Kenny said, maybe it's not, maybe they didn't damage it. It was damaged when they got it. So then they can get their money. It's a team. So help everybody. And then also reconcile all the accounts before the end of the day, meaning that, if you sent something back and you didn't, cross it off on the invoice, make sure that your invoice and their copy is the same. If there is a discrepancy, talk to the salesperson and say, hey, how is this going to work? Well, we're going to have to issue a credit. Okay, so you paid COD and then they're going to get a credit. Make sure you put a credit memo and make sure you follow up on that. All right. And again, they call it a pro tip on this. Treat drivers as one of your own employees. Small steps go a long way. And there's some things in workbook number page 14. But I'll share a story. I still have the cell phone number. He's friends with me on Facebook. I was telling Kenny about this guy last night because I used to buy from Saval back in the day. His name is Monty, and we became great friends. And we still talk to this day. But Kenny, I know you shared with last night or last time we spoke about some of the metrics on how you kind of a Yelp score for your drivers. Tell me, like, as receiving the product, what do you think is so important about the drivers and the suppliers?
Oh, an open, honest relationship is what makes it work. Our drivers are treated through this whole COVID event that went on. I every day made, well, once a week for them, made lunches so that they didn't have to worry about a lunch that day. I made bagged lunches, and as they came in, and then they would come back and tell you stories how I'm gonna eat this lunch tomorrow because when I made my deliveries, some of the restaurants gave them discounts or fed them or just, they got a hard job. just think of some of the, being DC, PG County, you got a lot of historic buildings. Me in Baltimore, a lot of kitchens are in the basements. These guys are carrying thousands of pounds of flour down into the basement of a pizza place every 25, 30 minutes. Um, they are the workhorse of distribution. Without them, this doesn't happen for anybody. So
Fair to say they were. Fair to say they were essential workers then, huh?
they are more essential than I am. They're amazing.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, I can't say it enough. Have great relationships with everyone that touches your product, because you never know how it's going to benefit you, because you will need their help and they will need your help one day.
And Tom, just wanted to elaborate on one of your points there, is that when you're vetting your supplier, part of that vetting should be what is their damage process and how is that handled at the point of receiving. So make sure you have that conversation as part of that supplier vetting process. Because sometimes if they start hemming and hawing, well, that means they don't have a clear cut process, and you can alleviate some issues down the line. So just make sure you get those answers up front before you sign any contracts.
Yeah, and definitely, if you have those conversations, do a follow-up email. Hey, Mr. Salesperson, I'm glad to talk today, and just to reiterate, you and I talked about the process that goes on, and this is what we said. If it's damaged, then this is how we get credit, and I just appreciate you coming out. That way, it's also in writing. It may not be on the contract, but then you've kind of, because salespeople, just like any business, come and go. So you want to make sure that if you're in this relationship for several years, that you have that original, conversation saved somewhere, in case it becomes an issue. Just, great point.
Yep.
Thanks.
And we have a comment from April. Thank you so much, April. We treat our delivery drivers with appreciation, and they go out of their way to take care of us.
I believe it. And I thank you, and I'm sure Kenny thanks you, but
Absolutely.
It's super important. They really are heroes in my book. All right, so now we got the product in the back door. Now where do you store it, right? And I told you earlier, I made some mistakes early on buying different containers that didn't match up. Think about when you're putting these things in, even the height of the shelves, that you can get this stuff in. The durability, the lifespan, the stackability, the labeling. I used to use Scotch tape. The blue painter's tape works well too, but it's a little more expensive. And just use Scotch tape. And for me, I used to always put the date that it was expired. So if I went in there and saw a date that was beyond the date that was there, then I knew it was time to get it out of the refrigerator. Whatever system you use, make sure it's trained. Meaning that if this is your prep date, put it on there. Make sure that it is. If it's any kind of a prepared item, that it's labeled what it is, who made it, and the date it was made. Also, watching those time and temperatures. If it's refrigerated, don't let it sit in the, get it in the refrigerator as fast as possible. And make sure like the products that you're storing things in, they're easy to clean. Even there's the handles. Make sure they have little holes in them, so when you turn them upside down to dry, that water doesn't sit in those little handles. It's the little things in life that your staff is going to appreciate it, and you're going to appreciate it. I always use the Tetris model to making sure that it's in. And then FIFO. We all know FIFO, first in, first out. Make sure that we are 100% rotating those products. And I would always say, when you're storing the product, actually putting it in, make sure this stuff is up front. You have to go in there on a constant basis and work with it and train the staff and make it as easy as possible. If I go and grab something, I want it to be the easiest thing to grab. I don't want to have to go in there, unhook something, open up a new can or any. I just want it to be super simple, grab it and move on. Because as we all know in this industry, during those power hours, it's running in, it's grabbing something, and it's running out. And the easier it is to find and make sure it's 100% that much easier, the flow of the restaurant. And it goes into here too in the accounting of the processes. Prioritize those placements. Move the older to the front. Have the tools you need to transfer the product readily available. Like Kenny was saying, some of this stuff might be in the basement. Some of this stuff might be in an outside refrigerator. Ask your staff, hey, is that easy to get up here? Maybe it's buying a cart. Maybe it's buying, a dolly, whatever it is to get that product. Maybe it's buying a different size. And I know this goes against some of the other things I said, but I'm pro employee. So I used to buy 50-pound bags of sugar, and they were a pain to carry, and they actually didn't fit into the thing. So the guy said, why don't you just buy a smaller bag? So I started buying 25 pounds of sugar, which really in the end of the day was like $2 more per pound, or $1 more, something ridiculously small. But at the end of the day, they were so much more happier because A, they could carry it easier, and it fit one open. It was all in the container. So again, go back to your employee, think about what you're doing. Sometimes you got to slow down to speed up, take a step back and say, wow, that doesn't make sense. Ask your staff, change it. And to implement multiple notification points for low out of stock items. Have systems in place. And if it's really, if it's something that you don't order all the time and it may run out, or you've run out of it in the past, put that on a special sheet. Have the manager check that at night. Or put a piece of tape on the last one that says, hey, this is the last one, order more. There's many tricks that you can do, but again, the more people involved who know this stuff, the more people who are vested in the success of your restaurant, the better. Especially if you have like your driver. If your driver's taking stuff down to your storeroom, the better relationship you have. Hey, Tom, I just noticed that you didn't usually order marinara sauce. You're out of marinara. Man, thank you so much. It's still early in the day. You can get some more down here. Again, and then as I spoke earlier, have that separate process for either high cost or high valued items as far as alcohol, steak. Some things you may want to keep under lock and key, depending on what they are. And you want to make sure that, you're accounting for them every day, every hour, and who has access to them. It's super important. It's to have that, when you have shrinkage and you have a lot of it, it really hurts the bottom line. So taking these few steps is really going to help out in that. Okay, preparing the food. Look at the totality of the restaurant and what you're doing. Some items are going to take longer to cook than others. Some things spoil quicker than others. The avocado picture's up there because, as you all know, when you cut those avocados, you only have X amount of time before they start turning brown. So making sure that, you cut those up for that power hour, but then you're cutting them to order or small batches during the slower flows. Depending on your operation, it may make sense to buy more items in bulk, or in my sense, you may want to make them smaller so they're easier to transport. The other, the huge thing that was a time saver in all the restaurants I worked in, and I tried to implement, is making if you make items a lot, to make spice packets, meaning that if you look at the ingredients and the dry spice is salt, pepper, oregano, garlic, to put those all into a container in a bag. So when you have to go make the product, all you're really doing is mixing, 2 containers, because the dry and the wet is separated, but you're ready to rock and roll in less time than trying to grab all those ingredients as once. So doing those prep kits, and putting cold stuff in one storage and dry stuff in another storage, that you can add those ingredients super quick on the fly, as we say, during those power hours, to make sure that you're ready. It's a huge time saver, and it's probably one of I'm glad that someone taught me. I did not come up with that trick by any means. And there's also some good points on workbook page 18 on that. Now, as we get it, we've talked about plating and presentation, and just like anything, that first impression is that visual. You want that wow factor. You want to have some height. You want to have some balance, some colors, some shapes. You want to have the right portion size. You want to have things that people say, wow. And this picture, if you're looking at the picture, it has like this toothpick on there. Some people put like olives or different things on the toothpick to bring it out, or a jalapeno. When you're actually preparing meat or cutting meat, is slicing it and then laying it out. Not only does it look nicer because you got the different colors, it makes it look like you're getting a lot more than you actually are. Simple fresh chopped herbs as a garnish, very simple. And I say if you get stuck in presentation, less is more. Simplicity is simplicity, and freshness is the number one thing. And then getting into the serving, from whatever point it is, whether you're a full service restaurant or even to go, is anticipating those guest needs, making sure that they have everything in the bag. If it's to go, the silverware, the napkins, or at least having the conversation with them, to say, hey, do you need any extra sauces or anything? picking up those cues on the order, checking special requests on the order. As we turn to digital and online, you have to read the special requests. And if there's an issue with the special request, if there's a way to contact the guest, contact them. If not, make sure it's clear on the bag or when they come in, and just say, hey, you know what? We don't carry Italian dressing, or we don't have blue cheese dressing. Is there something else we can get? But having that high level of communication is going to make the guests so much happier, right? Because doesn't it make you feel better as a guest? And I'm sure, Nicole, you've ordered some to-go food. When you get home, if you didn't have what you ordered, you're going to be upset. But if you didn't have what you ordered, but there was a note in there that said, hey, we don't carry ranch dressing, but we ran next door and got some from McDonald's or something, or when you walked into the store and you picked it up, that the manager said, hey, you know what? We don't have that particular dressing, but this is what we can offer you.
Yeah. Yep.
So definitely, making that meal, memorable, always letting the guests know what the next step is. And, always telling them what the next step is. So meaning that they know what to expect. If your food's taken late, hey, I'm going to run in the back and get this. Hey, you're the next one up. Hey, you can park right here. Hey, I understand you're uncomfortable because that guest doesn't have a mask. Go ahead and wait outside. I'll bring your food to you. Any little thing that you can help to take that to the next level. And then finally, El Yumbo, consuming. Now, you can usually tell when someone eats something, whether they have a smile on their face or not so much of a smile. And you want to get that feedback. If they don't have a smile, what can you do to make it better? What can you do to fix it? And then also, I always say is ask the why here. Why are they here? Why are they enjoying it? Why did they not enjoy it? And any information you can get, you can also capture that information on your POS system, especially if you use a reservation system, and putting little notes on there. Guests love Santa Margherita wine. They always like their steaks well done, or whatever it is. So when you get that ticket where you're waiting on that guest, that information is on there, and you as a server could, give all that information and make their experience that much better. So again, I can't say it enough, is that data, POS systems, integration, from inventory to ordering, all this stuff, in 2020, as much as you can get in your computer, is going to make your job so much easier, because it's going to intertwine every aspect of your restaurant, every aspect of procurement, and make life so much easier and give you feedback and numbers in real time. So just to recap that section, understand, and I think we just said, the interplay of your menu, storage, and final products, and that interplay is made so much easier by modern technology. Engage all your staff to ensure consistency. Have fun with it. I used to buy, if someone volunteered to do inventory to stay late, it was off their shift, or they wanted to learn a process. Hey, you know what? Let's grab some appetizers. I'll teach you how to do it. And then finally, digitize your process. We cannot say that enough. We're going to get into a little Q&A if anyone has it, and then we're going to go and wrap up with Kenny in a little fireside chat. Any questions? I'm sorry. Any questions for this section?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Do you suggest different prices for to-go food because of packaging and other costs?
It is a great question, and you have to look at the totality of the cost. Sometimes it does make sense. Are you delivering it? Is it just pickup? And again, I'll go back to one of the first slides. We are in the business to make money, and if your model has changed, then yes, you may have to change your price. As far as it goes on the menu, I'd look at what your mix is, how much you're doing in-house, how much you're doing out-of-house as far as to go and in-house. And, you can use you can use tools like a surcharge or to-go packaging. I know there's a bag tax. But as a rule of thumb, I try to incorporate those costs into the cost that is presented on the board. Because if you look at to-go, yes, you probably are packaging, it costs more to package it. It costs more to, for the to-go items, but you don't have to wash their dishes. You don't have a server to pay. They're not using your air conditioning. They're not using your restroom. So, you kind of have to monitor it and look at it as a total thing. If your in-house went, if your sit down went from 75% to, 75% to go, then analyze those numbers. And yes, you sometimes you're going to have to raise the cost. In fact, you might find that it's actually cheaper to do a lot of to go.
In regards to the food show you guys mentioned earlier, are there particular food shows that you would recommend in this area or for restaurateurs to be on the lookout for?
He's plugging his own place. I mean, any food show you go to is going to give you some insight, because that's where you see your cutting edge, information. And every major distributor usually does it. There's a Saval food show. There's a US Foods. There's a Cisco. I don't know. Did produce companies do it? Keeney doesn't do it, do they? You're on mute. But there.
Sorry about that. For a while, and I'm not sure if they're going to do it this year, but the Restaurant Association of Maryland would have a food show every year at Martin in Baltimore County, where they would pick, people that like we would attend, Cisco would attend, PFG would attend, but they would have like Keeney Produce, Capital Seaboard, and all these other companies, so that you could go through and talk to everybody in the marketplace, which also where a lot of places would premiere what their anticipation of trends were going to be for the next year.
Exactly.
So without those shows happening right now, shows like ours will have, we'll have like certain companies that will have their predictions for what they think trends will be.
Yeah, and also when I was a buyer, we used a lot of the food shows to speak to some of the higher ups for some of the companies to negotiate things that we wanted to see, or offerings to say, hey, here's something that we're looking to roll out in our restaurant group. How can you help us? So what programming do you have or items do you have that might feed into that? In addition, it's a great way to find new suppliers. So if you're looking to, you always have your core, but it's an opportunity to find like a new up and coming, someone who might have something really unique that can really help differentiate your restaurant. So I'm always a fan of trade shows, food shows, not just for the samples, of course, but also those are always great, but it really just helps you learn more about the industry, keeps you up to date as to what's going on, to Kenny's point, any upcoming trends, as well as just keep this networking. You always learn something. There's never been a show I went to when I didn't learn something. As being in the industry, a key feature is those relationship building, and a lot of that happens at those trade shows and food shows.
Not to mention the amount of knowledge that's provided by internal webinars at the food shows, or demos like breaking down a salmon 101, how to make bone, just things like that you may not know how to do, that could save you money or save you time.
Or new techniques.
Techniques, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's safe to say, if you get the opportunity to go to a food show, because nothing bad is going to happen. You can only leave there with more knowledge, more food in your belly, and a better understanding of your industry. So it's a win-win-win situation.
One last question here. Do you suggest contracts for suppliers when it comes to broadline supply?
Yeah, again, it goes back to, what we kind of talked about contracts, and hopefully I'm understanding the question correctly, is what I think a contract is I'm going to agree to buy from that supplier only for X amount of years, and they're going to guarantee me X prices on products. As Kenny spoke to earlier, is, if the market changes, meaning that if the price goes lower, you may be losing out. It does protect you sometimes if the price goes up, but there's usually clauses in there that they can still raise prices at certain points. Typically, because of the involvement and the expertise that you would need in the contract, I usually say, build your relationships and leave contracts for when you get 2, 3, 4, 5 locations, and you can specifically put someone on contracts to make your life easier. But great question.
So, and also to touch on that, within certain purveyor broadliners, there are, like us being a small independent, we work with, you work with your salesperson. There are internal groups that are discussions that you need to have with your salesperson to see if it works for you. Say, you know, if a bunch of people in the area are buying a certain product, if those people get together through your salesperson and everything, there's buying power. Just wanted to touch on that real quick. So not necessarily a contract, but discussions, as long as you're open and honest with your sales guy, he might be able to find you.
Yeah, and there's third parties out there too that you know, obviously they take a piece of the pie, but they'll look for you know, discounts and things of that nature. Kind of like if anyone uses Honey on their computer to get discount codes and stuff. Yeah, but never stop looking, never stop asking. Great point, guys. Great. So just to wrap these up, we're going to get into the last aspect of this is the inventory process. And again, I can't mention it enough and emphasize that the POS integration makes your life so much easier. You can track, manage inventories through proper loading of ingredients. It's every day. You know, when you first get these systems, there's a lot to do, but the more work you put up front on the back end, when you're having those busy times, when you're just, you know, bone tired and you don't want to do inventory, it makes it so much easier to have everything in its place and you hit a button and everything prints out. You know, looking at, you know, the scheduling of employees, again, if, you know, you have your core people who are doing inventory, but it's always great to get other people to help because there's so much to do, even in cleaning, you know, and those are the people, buy them meals, you know, let them, you know, get them involved in the inventory process, because they're going to set it up for the rest of the week, the rest of the night, the rest of the month, or they might be the person who counts next time, you know, to like, you know, to look at the people, the key players who want to learn. And then using those inventory controls again, from everything, you know, we talked about the receiving to matching invoices up, the pricing, you know, looking at every aspect. And again, with the POS integration, by watching these fluctuations, by watching the trend lines, it makes life so much easier. And some vendors have vendor integration where they can hook right into your POS system to monitor what's being sold and stuff, and actually have kickers in there. When you get to a certain point, they're going to add it to your order list. And again, going back to those, you know, trends, you can see the trends. Hey, you know what? Look, every Tuesday we're selling an enormous amount of whatever. And it could be because an office party picked your place on Tuesday to come down. But seeing those trends makes your job so much easier. You know, and again, we talked about it in the very first presentation, is making accurate decisions based on real needs in real time is super important by having these financials and the POS and inventory all ready to go. A big thing we didn't touch on also is, you know, record your waste. Have a system in place to record your waste. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to overcook stuff. Stuff's going to break. We're going to drop. You know, make sure that's put somewhere. So when you do inventory, if you're missing a bunch of stuff, that, well, hey, hold on, we overcooked 8 steaks. Okay, that makes sense. You know, boom, and then work on the process of reducing that. You know, and then I always say, you know, do inventory. You know, obviously before any other orders come in, but do it at a time that's not as chaotic. You know, ideally you want to do it when it's closed, but you know, as we all know, sometimes that's just not feasible. I always break it in parts. You know, do the storeroom, then close it. Put a big piece of tape on there. This is counted. Don't take anything out of here. Go to your, you know, your refrigerator, your freezer, et cetera, et cetera. So you're finishing up as the restaurant closes. And be relentless about the data and use it to change your processes and habits. All right. And I always said, you know, and if you're trying to change the way things are going in the restaurant, you know, it's not about the person, it's about the habit. And by using data, it's black and white. And that way it takes the emotion out of it. Hey, this is what the data is saying. Something, you know, we're overcooking things, or they're disappearing, or we got shrinkage. You know, let's talk about fixing it. That way it's not personal. It's about the data. So it's super important, the POS system. And we have in the workbook, there's a checklist of the things that I think, you know, you may not need all of them depending on the level of service your restaurant is, but it has a pretty good idea of what a POS system can do and what they offer. Because, you know, some systems are hardware, like you get the whole system, hardware, software, and they can cost $20,000-$25,000. Some of them are just iPad. You kind of pay a monthly fee. You know, some are just software where you already have, you know, the system, and all you really need is the software. And typically the software tends to be tying systems together like Restaurant 365, but getting different quotes, seeing what you need. You would be amazed if you get the correct POS system for your operation. You may end up saving money in the long run because you don't need a third party integration for your online because it's already built in, or you don't need a separate payroll company because it's built in, or you don't need a scheduler because it's built in. And it just makes super sense to do your due diligence and look at it, look at the reviews. And it's just, they're advancing so quick. They can do so much stuff. It's all in the cloud. You can have instant information on your phone. And that way you feel better leaving your restaurant, leaving your business, because you're still connected. In some, as much as I wanted to leave my restaurant, I always had a camera, or I wanted to see, because it's your baby, man. We understand that. So use technology to help that.
Tom, quick question for you. If you can go back to that one slide. We have a question from Colette at Colette's Cafe. Thank you, Colette. Any recommendations for POS system for a small operation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely look at the iPad ones. Like, there's a lot of them, but Revel is an iPad one that is really really interesting to use, because all you really need is an iPad, and you can start setting up your operation. Square is one that's pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking, to the big boys, and they have their own hardware and their own software. And the cool thing about them is they're integrated with their credit card processing. So you don't have to go out and then sign a separate contract for credit card processing. You can buy their unit, and they sell them individually. And I used them in one of my restaurants, and they were relatively inexpensive. They had, I would just call them up. They want to sell to you. I'd call Square. I'd call, Toast if you want to buy their equipment. If you want to use your own, take a look at I think it's pronounced Revel systems, are the ones that I would look at right off the bat. Clover is another one. I don't know, Kenny, what do you see out there?
Do you want to stick with something that's definitely, don't let anybody sell you anything that's not cloud-based? And if you are truly a small operation and doing your own accounting, you're probably using QuickBooks. I know Toast, Clover, Revel, they all will adapt to QuickBooks so that you could be your own accountant. And instantly, like when you close out at the end of the day, you close up your register on the cloud, your information is published to you then. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of them will then have handheld options so that your servers it gets rid of that, especially in this day and age with, COVID, you sanitize one and it comes with your server, and that is theirs for the shift.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
It processes credit cards right out of the handheld and everything.
Awesome. We have a comment from April. Thank you so much. Focus on interchange rates for what banks are charging.
Yeah, because everyone, that's all in the contract. I know that, again, when I left, I was using Square, and it was through their system, and I forget what it is, because there's interchange rates, there's swipe rates, there's small ticket rates. There's so many different rates to look at. So great thing. Do your due diligence, look at the contract, make sure you know what you're paying for.
Great questions, everyone. Thank you.
All right, to wrap up the inventory process, plan. The more you plan, the more people are trained, the better. Categorize, make sure that everything is organized in storage. Track and manage, use your POS system. Make sure your your sheets as you're going in to count, whether it be digital or on paper, match up to the areas you're going to. Complete the process. Make sure that the inventory is done before the next cycle. Make sure everything is in, and be relentless in that data. You want to remember to review your procurement process. I used to check my purveyors on a minimum every 6 months, meaning their prices, check in, make sure that I'm getting everything I need, because the systems change and they know what's going on. So they may offer some stuff that they didn't offer before. And again, like Kenny said, if you need something, ask them. They may do it now. They may be willing to do it. They may look into it. It's never an issue to have to ask for something. look back, as I say, this next level procurement, as I'm starting over thing, look back and ask yourself the first why. Why did you decide to open your restaurant? And what is, at the end of the day, what do you really, want? And I always say, get that true north. What is your mission statement? Ask all your whys, put it down on a piece of paper, and know why your company exists. And you can, when you know why you exist, it'll help you in your ordering. It'll help you in your procurement. It'll help you in everything because you're all aligned, and some of these questions, as we get into it, and I know this is a little different topic, is you have to decide what you are. You're going to be sustainable. You're going to be organic, or you're going to be whatever you are, to make sure that your suppliers match up also. So an example of a mission statement is up here. If you don't have a mission statement, get one, because it's your true north. And you can always turn to that whenever you face a problem in your restaurant. Next level procurement considerations, responsible business practices. You have to decide, as we're getting into these recyclables, and there's so many to-go things, you have to make the choice of what works for you and your organization. And right now, things that are highly recyclable tend to be at a higher cost. And, you have to make that decision as far as what your responsibility wants to be, and know the facts. Some of these items that are so-called, compostable need sunlight. So if they're put in the landfill, they're just as good as a regular piece of trash anyway. So understand that and communicate that, communicate that in your statement, in your mission. Hey, we're doing everything possible, within reason, to be profitable, but to also to be sustainable and to be, a good, take every consideration into having responsible business practices, And I'll read this here. It says sustainability does not have a major impact on your employees, stakeholders. It helps in recruiting top talent, employee engagement, and reduces turnover. It's top of line right now. A lot of people are talking about these things. So engaging with your employees to make sure that they understand what you exist for and why you exist for, and why you're buying that plastic container, or why you're buying a recyclable thing, or what you do. It truly helps build the cohesivity between you, your community, and understanding that there's more involved in a restaurant than just serving food, that you really are part of the community, and that you're going to make every reasonable effort to be sustainable and profitable, that's what you want to do. But sometimes you have to make choices. As I said earlier, you got to say no to say yes. And really be, you want to be part of the community. You want to be, no one wakes up in the morning and wants to do harm to the universe. I get that. So we have to figure out that balance of how to be profitable. And it's a tough question, but have those conversations, be in the front of it, and then you'll understand, your staff will understand where you're coming from, and you'll be one message instead of little pockets of, oh, he doesn't do this. No, we're one cohesive message. This is why we're doing it, because this makes sense for us at this time. All right. I think we have a few minutes left. What time is it? 10:30? We have to wrap up, or do we have time for a few questions?
We have a few minutes. We probably got like another 5 minutes or so.
Awesome. All right. So, Kenny, as we go through these, I'm going back one. As far as, what you've seen, I mean, you said there's 9,000 places that you serve. Mm-hmm. What have you seen, I guess, we're beyond COVID now. We're here, and I know your organization did a lot of stuff to help out and people, but I guess what, as a supplier, what are you seeing now? Just kind of walk us through a timeline of where you are now and where you came from, as far as the company, and where you see suppliers in this whole mix of serving food. And you are on mute still.
I mean, everybody witnessed the world pretty much shut down at one time. And suppliers, places like DC pretty much stopped operating as restaurants. But all the ancillary counties around the major cities, with people not being able to go out, we had people do extremely well through this. Carryouts, making fine dining restaurants becoming carryouts. Just the resilience of people and how they are willing to change to keep, this market working was fascinating. And finding that community partners along with us, I mean, a big part of just feeding those who didn't have food, putting together community boxes and dropping them off at churches and colleges and, just neighborhoods that were underserved, and just finding product to make that happen has been, a struggle. Trying to find, we are doing the farm to family program, finding 90,000 2-pound packages of turkey. I mean, our buyers are phenomenal. Being able to source things that other people just weren't able to get because of our honest relationships that we have with the people that we deal with.
And I know you and I talked last night, and you were also talking about like how a lot of restaurants and suppliers, and I think you even mentioned a shopping place that actually, you are now preparing meals, family meals that you're preparing and then giving to the restaurants and they're selling. I know we talked about this in prior things. You weren't part of that, but talk about that a little bit.
Like we had some supermarkets come in and some restaurants, a lot in Southern Maryland, teaching them how to take pans and prep out like a half a chicken and mashed potatoes and whatever, or even vegetarian and vegan meals, and having those so that if you don't feel comfortable going out a lot, you could go to your local, I mean, some of these were gas stations, some of these were delis, some of these were restaurants, but a lot of grocery stores that we deal with, you could just go in and pick up a family meal for 4 that had the instructions. You pop the lid off, heat your oven to that temperature, and you slide it in, contactless. I mean, it's the new wave is home meal. I mean, not just because of the COVID thing, but also, a lot of people are just so busy recovering from all of this. Meal prep, healthy meal prep is, it's an issue.
Yeah. So if you got a restaurant, reach out if you're struggling figuring out meal prep. They're out there to help you.
A lot of them have it on their websites where you can look and, they'll have their carry out menu, if they're whatever percentage you're in your county, dining in menu. And some even have grocery boxes where you, for $100 buy quesadillas for Monday, tacos for Tuesday, roast chicken for, and get the whole week's worth of food in one box, kind of like what was very popular with the box deliveries last year and the year before.
Like the farmer's box. Yeah.
Yeah. But now you can support your local establishment. Your favorite restaurant might be doing this.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's all I have. Does anyone have any other questions, or Nicole, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you guys. This was such an awesome presentation. Tom, great information as always. Kenny, what a wonderful addition to Tom's information. A lot of great tips and insights and trends that I think is really going to be beneficial to our restaurant community. As I said before, this is so not goodbye, as is our last session of our Emerge Stronger Restaurant Bootcamp. We will definitely be speaking again because I think, as to your point, Tom, I believe you just said, COVID is here, and now we're moving forward in how do we transition to the new form of business with this pandemic. Unfortunately, is not going away anytime soon. But what we want to make sure is that our restaurants and businesses in the county have all the resources and information they need to withstand any of those external threats. Hence, we put together the Emerge Stronger campaign. So we truly appreciate everyone's time this morning. Please feel free, if you have not attended some of the other sessions. As I said, this is the 4th and final current webinar in the restaurant bootcamp, but we do have the 3 other sessions on our Emerge Stronger library that you can go back and review. There is links there for the workbook that Tom referenced throughout the presentation that really has some great activities as well as templates that can help you start building that strategic plan to help get you through 2020 and set you up for success in 2021. As a appreciation with our sponsor, Pepco Holdings, in partnership with our sister organizations in Bowie Vic, as well as the FFC First. We thank them for their partnership. And we also have another section of our Emerge Stronger campaign is our Capital Matters series, which every Friday at 10 a.m. If you go to the Emerge Stronger PGC.com, you can register for financial management courses. These are great presentations across different subject matters. There's 8 in the total series. This is going into week 3. And like I said, it's every Friday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. That you can register for those events as well. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate you attending, and we'll see you soon.